Good morning. It's like 3:30 in the morning. Today's actually the 28th of April. I misdated yesterday's video, calling it the 28th when it was indeed the 27th. And unfortunately, I'm waking my little puppy dog up. I really don't want to wake her up, but I'm awake, 3:30 or so in the morning. I read about Walter Russell on my cell phone a little bit ago, an amazing article. An amazing man. Quite a genius, way ahead of his time. Discovered some interesting things. One of the things that he and his last wife had in mind was the problem of radiation and humanity, the problem from radioactive waste, and the nuisance that they would become and represent. The man was a genius. He had a different perspective, and his perspective was so far-reaching that apparently Nikola Tesla told him to hide his stuff for like a millennia until mankind was ready for it. Of course, the fear that these men had was that their stuff would be put to destructive, nefarious purposes. And of course, one of the things that I was reminded by reading this is the fact that we come up with the worst type of nuclear energy possible. And shortly after they developed these poison-generating reactors that have proliferated around the world today, they came up with a new type of nuclear reactor that actually wouldn't produce any waste. It actually would generate and work in a fashion that you didn't end up with a bunch of poisons that would harm the earth for thousands, for not just centuries, but millennia, for a long, long time. And so we did have the chance to develop, mankind did have the chance to develop nuclear reactors that would have been real safe, real efficient, real cheap to run, but for some reason we went the other direction. Now, why do we go the other direction? Well, there's an evil force on the planet that's been misdirecting shit for a long time. And in case you're wondering, I would say around 3,000 years, maybe even 70,000 years. I think the evil ones who have survived several Earth ages continue to plague mankind, continue to plague the Earth, continue to plague the inhabitants of the Earth. I think we're coming to the head in which the rest of mankind recognizes these evil bastards for what they are, and we get rid of them for once and for all. We cannot coexist with these evil bastards. I mean, they've got nuclear bombs that are basically continent busters. Man, I don't want that stuff going off. I don't want the after effects of it. I don't want the radiation. Now, we come to another topic that's very important to me, and that is the chemical war. And now it's a biological war that's being waged against humanity and frankly, all life on the planet. Yeah, I think they'll destroy the planet if left to their own devices, but it's time we talk about them and get them out in the open. Now, my former supervisor, God bless his soul, he's alive. He's just barely older than I am. A real genius of a guy. I'm not going to mention his name. I don't have permission. I mean, a man needs his privacy. But one of the things I loved about the man is that we would go out to eat and hang out on weekends. We got to liking each other. He and his wife and I would go out and we'd eat, and I learned a few things from them. One was always order water. It was cheaper. Now, I have to live on the cheap. He didn't have to live on the cheap. He had bucks coming in. And he would wear his old clothes, his old ratted clothes with holes in them. Of course, today I do that. I mean, I learned from him several ways, and I picked up that habit of, dressing in camouflage is how he liked to put it, because he didn't want anybody knowing who he was or what he did. And I could understand in that rural area of Mississippi that some people would get very jealous if they realized, what a brilliant man he was, how educated he was, and the importance of his work and how well rewarded he was. And when I look back at it, I mean, I know he was knocking down what I would consider big bucks at the time and still does okay, but I don't think that he took, I don't think he got his, I think he earned more than he took. That's another thing that I like is men and women who actually give more than what they take. I mean, I don't want you to give me money. What I want you to do is I want you to buy my Bible. Now, when you do that, yes, I get some money. And I think that you're getting more value than what you're giving me. And I like that. I don't want to owe you anything. I don't want to owe anybody anything. I mean, that's the ideal. And I know I'll probably be in debt to people forever, beyond this life for some of them, including my last supervisor, somewhat of a mentor. He helped straighten my ass up, okay? He helped me to learn how to be flexible in my thinking and not box myself in, not paint myself into a corner. He's not into what I'm doing now. He's really upset. Don't think he understands it very well. And to be quite frank, I don't understand it very well myself. And that's okay by me because I don't have to understand everything. I just have to continue on through this life and conduct myself according to the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, or at least a spirit. I hope it's a good one. I think his concern is that I might be anti-Semitic. And he was studying at one point. His wife revealed to me that he was considering becoming a rabbi. I need to tell you a few things, and one of those is that that little postage stamp of a country that I complain about in the Middle East is in deep doo-doo. They're in some deep shit, folks. And I got to be careful on this platform what I say, but that little country embraced this modern medical technology wholesale. They swallowed it hook, line, and sinker. They got more of those shots than anybody else on the planet. And I think at this point, they're suffering more of the side effects than anybody else on the planet. And in a certain sense, I think they've been targeted for extinction. It ain't me who's targeting them. It's not you either. It's the guys who have been manipulating them, using them, hiding among them, behind them. The guys behind the scenes that have been misusing them and putting them up to nefarious purposes. Now, I say putting them up to nefarious purposes like they're totally innocent and ignorant. They aren't. They've allowed themselves to be used. They let their egos be assuaged so that they think that they're the greatest thing since sliced bread or beyond that. I mean, they got egos, super egos, I mean, they're real egoistic bastards who think they're the chosen people and supposed to rule the earth. Talk about supremacism. There's nothing that beats Jewish supremacism, and I agree with that fellow who used to be the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, who's into politics. Oh, what was his name? I saw him on Donahue when I was watching television. I guess that's how our mother kept us kids under control, was put us in front of the TV set all day long, watching the soaps, watching, what was that, Queen for a Day or something like that, handed the roses and the crown and sat on that stage in front of everybody, and what a show that was. I mean, and how imbecilic of us to be entertained by something so simple as that. So weird. All those game shows on television way back then. I remember the doggone dances too, the polkas. I mean, life was kind of boring in a way. And those people would just be dancing around, kind of dancing fools in a way. But I got news for you. I took up dancing and I did the polka a little bit. Not much. It was hard. I mean, it was too hard. And those people that spent more time up in the air than on the ground, on the floor, bouncing around, my God, that was more strenuous than running. Running was a breeze compared to doing the polka. Yeah, and in case you're wondering, you know, I guess I'm half Polish. Um, Mom and that family, uh, part of them came over through Ellis Island. Um, Navage, which basically is like Smith in Polish. Um, I got to hang out with my relatives a few years ago, and man, I was so glad that my parents had left that little town and traveled because I had an entirely different life, completely different view of the world. Um, their lives were pretty quiet, pretty desperate, but I must say they had each other and they hung out together and they loved each other, and there was a lot more warmth there than what there was in my family and my life because we were more disjointed. So our roots had been disturbed. Their roots hadn't been disturbed, and I mean they knew each other rather well in their quirks, and it was endearing. Boy, I had a good time at their invited to their party a long time ago, discovering that part of my family. It was nice. Um, I just wish that, and I know my mother wished that she had been more open minded to the languages because I could have learned French and Polish at home. Grandpa was French Canadian, so I could have learned French and I could have learned Polish at home. And then over in Europe, I was at the right age. I could have learned German if they'd have been willing to put me in the schools, public schools in Germany. It would have been so nice to have all those languages going. And I learned a little bit of Spanish, but a lot more Italian, and hung out in Europe for a while with people who could speak 5 languages, even 7 languages. And the wonderful brilliance and richness of that. You folks talk about diversity. There was nothing more diverse than traveling by rail, by train in Europe and going through all those countries, those little fiefdoms with their quaint ways, um, and their borders and their customs, the art and the languages and the food. I mean, it was a real playground. It was really nice hanging out there with those people. You got to see their perspective and you got your eyes opened. Um, it really was delightful. And then they had to spoil it with the euro and with all that unity, which has all gone communist at this point and is backfiring on them because they're all joined up in NATO, uh, which isn't any good, far as I can tell. I'm sorry, folks. I just don't agree with that stuff. Um, I think that the ruble in Russia have been mistreated for a while. We've um, downgraded their currency, undervalued it for a long time, and now it's starting to get some value. Of course, they've got better leadership today than they had most of, well, my life anyway. And in the last century, they had some horrible leadership. And that leadership came from New York City, by the way. The Shifts were financing that damn revolution over there. They plotted it, planned it, and financed it from our shores. I don't even think that's legal. I think what they did was illegal as hell. And that bastard Schiff that's in the Congress or Senate today, that son of a bitch should be in prison. Matter of fact, we should dig up his relatives, his ancestors, and imprison them all. I know that sounds horrible, but they did some horrible stuff. Now, let me explain something to you. Henry Kissinger said that in order for there to be peace on earth, for there to be world peace, that Israel would have to cease existing as a country, cease to exist as a nation. Henry Kissinger, Mr. New World Order himself, said that maybe a dozen years ago, at least 10. Why did he say that? What does Henry know that the rest of us don't know and understand? Well, I think it's illegally founded. I think the land was stolen. Sir Balfour and his damn declaration for Mr. Rothschild or Sir Rothschild. And then, of course, we get that last jackass president of ours, who you all revere and respect. I think the man deserves some respect. But when he takes the Golan Heights and gives it away, did he own it? Did he have proper title to it? Did Mr. Trump own the Golan Heights? Well, then why and how could he give it to Israel? And by the way, I think it's been renamed Trump Heights. And of course, the Israelis put forward that this was Cyrus the Great reincarnated. Bullshit. I'm not saying Yahweh can't use anybody, because Yahweh certainly can use whoever Yahweh chooses. But the man was not America first. He was Israel first. Just like all those other jackasses to occupy the White House. Except for Barack Hussein Obama, who actually was kind of an Israeli firster in a different way. He was more underhanded and deceptive. And you ladies out there who think that, you're God's gift to man, I wonder at this point, because you gave us Barack Hussein Obama. It was your white guilt that got that bastard elected to office. And look at what's done to the nation. I hope you're enjoying Barack Obama's third term as President of the United States of America. Because he's running this show. He hates this nation. He and his husband hate this nation. And they want to destroy it. And they love their Uncle Georgie, whatever, Schwartzy. Soros. He's another name changer. I need you to understand that the world is not as it seems. Even Benjamin Disraeli, whatever, Prime Minister of England, said that entirely different personages behind the scenes run the world than what you think. And he was in a position to know. He was also a Jewish man, and he was an incredible guy. I mean, he let us know some things, and so we need to take adages like that from great men, and even if we don't understand them, we need to look at those sayings and hold them dear and try to figure out, how can we make this true? How can we come to an understanding so that what this guy said is true? What is that perspective? Or how does that change our perspectives? How does that enlighten us? Russell Weber was an incredible guy. I must have been somewhat aware of him. He was into figure skating. I liked figure skating quite a bit. I know it's not a very manly sport at all, but what the heck, it is graceful as can be and very athletic. And artistic. It's beautiful. Bodies in motion. The energy level, what's expressed then. Some of these great men in the century before the last century, they understood the workings of the universe. I'm convinced they understood that stuff, and they didn't dare. They knew better than to share it with the rest of us, because they knew that it would be put to nefarious uses, nefarious ends, nefarious means. It would be used for evil. Now, I know there's nothing new under the sun. Only thinking makes it so. So I'm trying not to outthink myself. I'm trying to let you know that things aren't as they seem. We need to have a little bit more flexibility, but yet we have to watch out, because what we're dealing with today is a very wicked evil that's coming to a head. And everybody knows that and sees that. The United States has been defeated for a long time. I, I thought about starting this out as a greeting Slavelandia, or welcome land of the free and home of the slave. Because that's what you are. You aren't free and you aren't brave. You aren't even willing to get your heads out of the sand, and you aren't willing to open your eyes. So you need to open your eyes and realize things aren't as they seem. You need to do this to be able to defend yourselves. I think we're going to just barely etch through or squeeze through these caverns. We're just going to barely put ourselves through these tight places, and we're going to make it to the other side. I really think we're going to do that. But these stupid jackasses who violate the laws and then don't give a shit, even don't care about getting caught, they're dangerous. Oh, you poor people in Arizona. You've got 3 people who knowingly, wittingly signed off on a fraudulent vote. All 3 are basically Democrats, including that stupid-ass Republican rhino governor who comes from an organized crime family. And then you got another guy who's supposed to be enforcing the laws. And what does he do? He files a mamby-pamby suit against the Secretary of State so he can run for United States Senate and get away with it. The guy should be in jail. He's failed to do his duty. He should be charging her up with the crimes, and he should be maybe even going after his own governor. But he won't do it. Why? Because he's a Democrat? And because he's guilty of signing off on what he knew wasn't an honest election. All 3 of them should be in prison right now. Governor Doug Ducey, or Roscoe. Is he a name changer? I really don't know what his background is. I don't give a shit. I don't give a damn. I just don't like the guy. He's continued on with the tradition of corruption in that governor's office in Arizona. And he robbed from the retirement community. He changed the law, stole their only cost of living increase possible in the last 20 years. He's a thief. He should have given those old retired people a cost of living increase. By law, it had been earned, but he got the law changed so he could steal from them. And then he hands the retirement system over to one of the worst banks possible, a real corrupt bank. But of course, organized crime back on the East Coast where he comes from, what's organized crime famous for? Oh, managing retirement funds. Oh, what did they do with those retirement funds? They make them disappear, folks. They're jackasses. And then you got that Secretary of State. She certified an illegal election, and she keeps pulling stuff to steal the elections. And the stupid-ass Democrats that are in Arizona are worshiping her because she's getting away with it. If you don't want to play fair, and if you're going to celebrate not playing fair, imagine your butt hurt when you get caught or when you get slammed by the other side. So what's your butt hurt going to be like when the shooting starts? Are you going to change your tune then? Oh, we didn't mean for that. Please don't shoot us. We didn't mean any harm by it. We won't do it again. Oh, hell. You'll do it again unless you're put 6 feet under. And that's what this nation's coming to, sadly. The guys who run the planet want that. They celebrated America being so divided. Never before has America been so divided. And never before did we think that we would be alive to witness this moment in history, because we could only read about the barbarism of the distant past in history books. But boys and girls, now we're going to get to live it and see it. Do you realize who gave that speech? In the Cardinal's presence, with the Cardinal's blessing for that fundraiser in New York City? You folks better go watch that thing, 'cause you've been worshiping that boy for way too long, and he's one of them. And if you don't believe me, go watch his speech at that doggone fundraising dinner they give after every presidential election and before the swearing in of the new president. You tell me the Catholics don't have their midst so damn deeply into this nation. They do. Oh, again, the rank and file and people are very nice. They're submissive, and they generally live by the rules, by the laws. Good people. Just like the Mormons. Great people. It's the systems that are the problem. They're all controlled centrally, with the sun, S-U-N, at the center of it. And if you don't understand that, then go to Kazakhstan or watch one of the videos that I never did post, but I meant to post a link on my blog in which you can see that grand round table with each of the religions sitting at it, all each under the control of the sun god, Apollo, which, if you read the Bible at all, it's a little different name in the Bible. It's the angel of the pit, Apollyon. Go read it. Go look it up. That's what's in the King James Bible. I don't know what's in the proper name version. I'll have to look that up. It's over there under 2 Nike boxes. A little puppy ate my shoes. Well, I tend to like my old clothes with the holes in it, and I love to walk around in camouflage, except I'm the real deal. I can't afford things it'd be nice to have a nice wardrobe. I went and spent a bunch of money on clothes years ago and went into a famous department store. Not a high-end place, but, kind of a lower end, high end of the low end, I guess you could say. And I remember going in there, and I don't know why. I know why I chose this young man to help me out. I needed new clothes. I'd been wearing $5 shirts for a while. Permanent press cotton that doesn't have any press in it. Cheap looking stuff. $5 a piece shirts. And I go to these places up in Scottsdale where the princess is dressed in fine raiment since her grandfather was Walt Disney. So I went to this place, and they had a special. Get their card, and you get so much off. They had a sale going on, and I decided I'm going to go back, and I budgeted myself. I think I started with $500, and I went to over $1,000 by the time it was done. Well, I hadn't bought clothes in years, maybe decades or something at that point. And gay guys have got better taste than I have. I mean, they know what colors work, what styles work, and I didn't quite take all of this guy's recommendations, and I'm still wearing some of those clothes now. And gee, I think that was in about 2004 when I did that great splurge. And I remember this guy pretty well. It was a mulatto guy. He was a nice guy. He was kind of sweet, sensitive. And when I asked him to help me, I told him, look, I've got a budget, and this is what I need. I don't think his eyes lit up then, but I'll tell you, by the time we were done, I thanked him. I mean, he was great help. I wish I'd have bought the shorts he recommended back then, the microfiber shorts. Those things, I bought the tan ones, the plain tan ones, and I bought some others that were kind of black. It was okay looking, but then there was this other pattern that was really good, and he had another one that he liked better, and I didn't have the money to buy for. I bought the other 3, and I wish I'd have taken his advice on that one pair of shorts. That's always haunted me because they were good looking, better looking than the damn bland tan stuff. Like he said, he was right. At the end of our shopping spree, I had a couple of sport jackets. Geez, I don't even remember what else. I remember the dress shorts back then. I didn't have much in the way of shorts, and living in the desert, you need shorts. at the end of it, I thanked him. And he thanked me profusely because, as he said, I had a good time. He was really happy. I mean, he had a good time shopping for me. It was great. It was a lot more fun than when I was shopping with my mother. That was a real pain in the ass. Mom was, I don't know, it wasn't much fun with her. She didn't have as much of a good time. You know, I was so skinny that she'd have to peg up my pants and stuff so that they would fit okay. I'm glad Mom was willing to do that, and I remember shopping for clothes for school. I hated it because nothing fit me. I was so skinny, so lanky, and I looked at pictures of myself from just a few years later. I looked at pictures of myself, and I was like, how the hell could I walk? I was so damn skinny. It was just amazing that it was awkward looking. I remember one of my girlfriends when I was a sophomore in high school. I remember visiting her family, and we were pretty sweet on each other. It was innocent stuff back then. Was I 15 years old or something? And I wrote her letters and all kinds of stuff. Sealed it with a kiss and all kinds of dumbass, saccharine-like sweetness. And she chided me for it. I mean, I was the romantic out of the two of us. That's kind of weird, isn't it? Men aren't supposed to be sensitive or romantic, and she was kind of the hard ass of all things. Well, I kept writing her, and she was very realistic about things, would write me back. It was wonderful to get those letters. I looked forward to it, but she was more practical than I. We were a military family, so it's like ships passing the night. We weren't going to run into each other again. I don't know whatever happened to her, but I remember her mother saying to her husband, "Oh, he's so skinny," you know. She didn't. I guess she didn't approve of me because there wasn't that much to me. Look, I'm in high school and I think I weighed 112 pounds at the time. I was small. I was short. I appreciated the supervision that I got from my last man who trained me up. He was brilliant. As one of those who had supervised me earlier commented, that he just was so brilliant, so smart, and he is smart. He'll still talk to me, but he's not happy with me. And so I realize I've said some things kind of sloppily. I realize my perspective has changed and changes. I also realize that you folks don't realize what I've been through that has impacted me. And I'll tell you about that stuff at some point. But I lived as a minority a few times in my life. I lived as a minority on a military base. Um, there were a few times, quite often, when blacks outnumbered whites, and they were pretty rough on us white guys, um, especially the black girls of all the crazy things. I don't know why they felt they had to take it out on me, but they certainly did. We were just kids. I remember playing marbles and how crazy we were for marbles and winning and collecting marbles from each other. It was a good outlet for our violent sides, I guess I'll say, because you'd be able to smash the other guy's marble from the distance as hard as you want and hit it. And guess that's better than hitting the kid, right? Or getting hit. And I lived as a minority in a Jewish community, and that was a real eye opener. And it was no fun at all. They actually did some damage to me. I'll tell you about that someday. Oh well, might as well tell you about it now. I might as well fess up my foibles. Um, Lived in a little town called Winthrop, Massachusetts, for about 9 months total. Parents sold the house in Brockton. My dad was finance officer for Boston Army base. The military had a 3 or 4 story house available in Winthrop. So we sold the house and moved into that house. It had a massive yard, and I remember taking care of it. We left it much better than it was when we arrived. We got rid of all of the weeds that collected around the bushes. I hated doing that, but looking back at it, we did it as a family, and I kind of miss playing in the dirt like that. And I thought of it as a waste of time. I wanted to do other things, but we were required to do it, and my dad was about, keeping up the good appearances and minding P's and Q's. In the military, you have a lot of regulation and regimentation that you have to do, you have to live up to. I wish I had done a little bit more and been a little bit better boy for sure. Wish I'd have shown and given my dad more respect than what I did. One of my deepest regrets, because you can't go back and do that. Anyway, just to give you an idea of what Winthrop, Massachusetts was like, there were 4 synagogues, there was 1 Catholic church, and there was another Catholic church which we Protestants shared so we could have services there. The Catholics were magnanimous and they let us have services at a little different hours than theirs, so we shared that one church. So the Protestants were on the bottom of the whole pile, then Catholics, and then the Jews. The Jews that were there were mostly what I would call poor Jews. Winthrop was a poor place. I mean, it was at the end of Boston Airport's runway, pretty much. It was out on a peninsula, and the jets took off from the runway, and then they flew over the water, and then they flew over Winthrop, and we all were subjected to that loud, horrendous noise, which I'm pretty sure impacted us all in a very negative fashion. I had a rough time. I remember hanging out in the streets. Not much, but the streets were different back then. We all had like front porches. There were apartment buildings, and you'd sit on the steps of the porch and talk to people, watch people go by. It was kind of a neighborhood thing. We had the corner stores and all that. I remember the big Irish cop on the beat, and he was like a giant teddy bear. Of course, I mean that's the way I find some of these great warriors, is that they're really nice guys, but their training, when they're called into action, there's something else. You would never ever imagine that this nice fellow that's so happy-go-lucky could be turned into that vicious and violent and able to get the job done. When you hang out with those guys a bit, you realize, you're in awe, because they're really nice men generally. I mean, they're the nicest, actually, and yet they're the baddest asses around. It's a job. They do their jobs. Some of the guys I've run into, I don't really like the stuff they've told me very much. I try not to remember it. I don't want to repeat it. I want to forget that stuff. I'd like to see them, them live the end of their lives peaceably. Most of them are older than I am. Probably many of them have passed. Some are younger than I and probably suffering from their PTSD. Yeah. Well, I would go to and from school carrying huge amounts of books, and back then, if you were sweet on a girl, you'd carry her books. And my God, I could barely carry mine alone, let alone somebody else's. And Mom raised me to be chauvinistic, as she later chewed me out for. You do this for the girls, you do that, you give up your seat, you compliment, you do all of this stuff. And then later, I guess my mom changed her mind and decided I was a male chauvinist pig. Well, I dutifully listened to my mom, and she went on and on about how I was a male chauvinist. And at the end of it, I kind of smiled and says, "Mom, you reared me this way. You reared me that way." And she would get upset and, whatever, and what could she say? That's the way she reared me. And Mom made sure to discipline me a little bit too much, perhaps. She was too harsh on me. She was too harsh on my father as well. She was just way too tough. I had a sweetheart in school there. I don't even remember her name, but I remember her and the hat she liked to wear. And she was a cute girl. And we would talk for hours on the phone, but that's all we could do. Why? Because I was a little Gentile boy, and it wasn't proper for her to be seen even talking with me. So we never dated. We just spent hours talking to each other on the phone. And I don't know if it's because we were both lonely or needy or what, but I mean, I really was trying to get a date with her, I think. And she was willing to spend hours talking with me on the phone, but when it came to meeting, she couldn't do that because she was Jewish and I wasn't Jewish. That was a little bit disturbing. I got to admit it. And then I remember going to the prom, and I remember the girl's name I took, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and petite. And one thing about these little girls, they're tough as nails. Don't let their small size kid you, folks. They'll take a guy a foot taller than them on and go toe-to-toe with them. They don't back down. She was very beautiful. Kind of wished I'd have gotten to know her a little bit better, but I was kind of just overtaken by her beauty. We were only in 9th grade then. And because I entered the school in the middle of the year, they would only give me, the highest grade they would give me was a C. And I remember the teacher's name, the older gentleman, who brought me in and explained to me that our grades here are cumulative. And so even though you're doing A work, we can only give you C's. Hope you understand that. Hope you accept that, you dumbass Gentile. Gentile's a crappy word, folks, but we'll deal with that later on. It's from the Roman Latin gentilius, which means Roman citizen, I believe. Now, what the hell is a Latin word doing in a Greek Bible? Yeah. Somebody put that in there. That's one of those great mysteries of the Bible that's worth sorting out. Let's see. So I got harassed, books thrown down, knocked out of my arms, pushed around, threatened to be beaten and struck. Hell, I probably weighed every bit of 100 pounds at the time. Wasn't even 5'4", 5'5", maybe small. Well, heck, maybe I was only 5'2". It seems like girls were taller than I was at the time. My sister was taller than I, and everybody treated her like she was older. Anyway, I didn't have a good time in Winthrop. They gave me C's, dropped my overall GPA average. That impacted my future, which is exactly what they wanted. They wanted to make sure that their kind got the advantage and my kind didn't. And they want us to be accepting, and they want us to bite the bullet and take it in the shorts for them. I'm tired of that stuff. And I remember my dear friend back then, Lenny. He'd brag about his dad's German Luger. I guess it was the real deal. He had to show it to me, and he got the gun out. I didn't feel right about handling that pistol. I mean, accidents happen, and he got into his dad's guns. I don't think I touched them. Didn't want to. I mean, my dad always told me not to handle the guns unless he was around. And that was one thing I listened to him about. Sure, I'm glad I did. And yeah, I had my own shotgun, but I didn't touch it unless we were going duck hunting, and it was with my dad. And that probably helped keep me safe. I'm just amazed looking back that Lenny handling his dad's handguns that it might have been illegal Nazi memorabilia at that, but how proud he was of that stuff. And I realize now that that gun's probably worth thousands today, but who cares about that? I just thought that it wasn't right for us to be handling what could have been a dangerous instrument in our hands. I'm not anti-gun. I look at them just as tools. At this point, I'm looking at them as absolutely necessary. I remember Jews for the Preservation of Gun Ownership, and it was a group that I thought was rather wholesome and protective, and they continued on that motto of never again, which at this point I think is kind of a hollow thing because their never agains may not have occurred, certainly not the way they claim, not at all. They make false claims. They make claims of victimhood that they shouldn't have made, and they push that on the rest of the world to make us feel guilty, so we vote for them or we do whatever. We give them special favors and give them license to do shit they shouldn't be doing. Remember going to some of the concerts then. The Pandoras showed up, all-girl group. I don't remember the music very well. What's his name in the Rebels? There were some early bands back then in that area that I wish I'd have seen more, but I had to ask parents to drive me everywhere. And I look back at it and I think that my parents did a pretty good job of getting us out and about and carting us around. Now, I went into a biology class at Winthrop in the middle of the year. I think we moved in December, so it was kind of the middle of the year. And I had to do dissection and all that stuff and draw what I saw. And I didn't really like the smell of those animals. I don't even remember many of them. Frogs. Don't know if it was a rabbit or what, but I don't know what we dissected. All I know is that I would go home with a lot of homework. That's one thing I will say about the Jews in Winthrop. They sent us home with a lot of homework. And of course, all the Jewish boys and girls had to do that too. And they had fun teasing us Gentiles, if you will, in the classroom. They'd set us up from all kinds of things. I remember one guy saying, "Do you want to see a picture of so-and-so topless? Pay me some money. I'll show you the picture of the classmate topless," and she'd be sitting there nonplussed by it. I mean, right in front of this little girl, right? You're going to show me a picture of her topless. And I'm just thinking, I don't want to do that. Don't care about it. Well, of course, if you actually forked over the money, he'd laugh at you and show you a picture of her when she was 3 or 4 years of age, topless, right? Anyway, I mean, I don't know if that's showmanship or hoaxmanship or what it was, huckster sorts of stuff. But I wanted to take Latin because I wanted to get ready for medical school. And they wouldn't let me in the Latin class. I had to take Spanish. Was it French? It was French. Yeah, that was French. Took Spanish earlier. And I didn't want to study that. I wanted to study Latin, but they had this tiered system, and I was at the tier just below that, so I couldn't get into Latin class. And I went to the office, I requested it of the counselors, and they wouldn't let me in it. That was prejudice. Because the other students in my math class were in the Latin class, so I was kind of in the advanced class for that. They had like 6 different levels or something. And they stuck me at a lower level than what they should have. That's okay. I busted my butt while I was there. And then I remember the teacher. I'm not going to mention his name. But he demanded that I take the college entrance examination for biology. Now, mind you, I had only been in his class for 6 weeks at the most, and I was reading the biology text, trying to catch up on it. So every night when the television set is on, I'd be down on the rug, sitting down, reading my biology text, studying. My mom later told me that they were always trying to figure out how to help me, but I always had my nose in my books. Hell, it was the only peace and solace I got was going to the books. Then I'd be left alone, and of course I just wanted to say to my mom, but I bit my tongue that time. I did not say, "Did you ever think you were my problem?" Because she was. Yeah. Her neuroticism, her anxiety got visited on me, and she had a lot of anxiety. It was not good. It wasn't healthy. Anyway, Mr. What's his name? Big, overweight Jewish guy. I think he had blonde hair or white hair. He was older. Insisted I take the biology examination along with all of the other students there. And I guess he wanted me there so his students would have higher scores or would be proven superior. It wasn't a fair contest. And I remember as a little boy walking up the steps to MIT. And I mean, the steps were so tall, I had to walk up diagonally at an angle to give my legs enough lift to get myself up to the next step level. I remember the impression it gave on me because it's like, man, I can barely walk into this place. It's kind of like a mausoleum in some other ways. It seemed like a very dead building, but I went in there and I took their damn test. The teacher was upset. I showed up as other students. My score was much higher. And I'm real grateful that they insisted I take that test because it was so high, it got me into graduate school later on. My other scores were just miserable, abysmal, 50 points below the mean on one in English, and 50 points above the mean on the other, mathematics. But on biology, it was 169 points above the mean. Oh, and I hung out with some students that were celebrating our senior year. And what were they celebrating about? Well, my friend had been admitted to 6 different universities on full scholarship. He had perfect test results, perfect 800s, 1,600 on the combined score. I guess he got everything right. I wish I had met him earlier and been hanging around with him. That would have helped. And I remember the boy and the girl up the street, the colonel's son, I think it was. He was a jerk. And she was kind of stuck up on herself as well. And I'd try to hang out with them a little bit because they were pretty bright. But they would talk about these German philosophers that were way beyond me at the time. And I'm glad I hung out with them. But they understood this stuff. They read it before they even, school must have been very boring for them. They knew the German philosophers. They'd already read that stuff and mastered it by senior year. And I wish I had, but they were kind of weird folks too. They didn't relate to the average school child very well. Yeah, the people that were really brainy didn't get along with others all that well. There was an ostracism. And my mother was glad that I wasn't any smarter than what I was because I would have suffered from that in her opinion. So I was up there, but I wasn't quite up there. And that was a long time ago. I've lost a lot of that edge. I lost a lot of that intelligence because I inhaled, I indulged, which wasn't the stupidest mistake of my life, I'm sad to say, but it ranks up there among the top 5. Yeah. So that drug culture was a waste. It wasted me. I hurt myself with it. It really took a lot of the edge off that I had going. I got harmed, I finally woke up and realized what damage I had done. The fog in my mind lifted long enough for me to see what I had done to myself. Then it descended back on me quickly, and I panicked while it lifted, and then it returned. And at that point, it was a fuck it kind of moment. I'm not going to let anything rule over my spirit, not like this. So I went about early in my life to quitting and balancing my life out, which led me to taking up yoga, which led me to 3HO, which led me to seek Dharma, and down that road for a little bit. You know, these are things I usually don't discuss with even my friends. You know, people think they know me, and I'm real square-headed, and never would do that, right? And I kind of like that visage. I like putting on that because it's embarrassing. And I did my best to correct myself, my best to mind my P's and my Q's, and to discipline myself and get myself corrected and recover from the damage as best I could. Oh, hell. I went up to my dad's funeral, buried my dad, and here I was. My brother and I were talking more than we had our entire lives. So in that, it was a good time, but it wasn't really a happy time. And it was November in the winter. I had my dog with me at the time, and he was in decent enough shape he could go up and down the steps then. So I flew him up. And that was the last, only and last time I flew him. They got rid of allowing emotional support animals on planes. And the plane ride back was a little bit too much for him. But he wanted to be with me more than anything else, and I didn't want to leave him at the vet's. He probably would have died from heart sickness just being alone. It's a good dog. I miss him. Well, anyway, my brother had to chide me about my previous indulgence. I finally had to look at my brother, and I asked him, Jay, how long has it been? How long has it been? And he thought for a minute, and I finally told him, I said, it's been more than 45 years. Let it go. Yeah, I did some stupid shit. We all did stupid stuff. And in case you're wondering, that was given to you courtesy of your United States central government. That was a CIA program inflicted upon our own people, funding their corruption and their, just like the French Connection, they funded their Secret Service in the same way by pulling dope deals. So almost all that shit was brought into the country by our own CIA. Your music culture, that rock culture that came out of Laurel Canyon, that was a military intelligence program as well, as were the untimely deaths of most of those rock artists. They got rid of them once those people started straightening up and talking about how they were putting the drugs down and weren't going to do them. They didn't want us doing that, folks, so they killed those guys. They murdered them so that we would keep on under their spell, under their sorceries, under their witchcraft. It's very important you recognize that for what it is. Those people come out of Kiev. All right? That's what we're fighting for over there, and we're on the wrong side. We should have stayed out of that damn thing. But as it is, you and I are slaves. Our founders gave us a wealth-based system because they knew it would keep us out of wars. But we have a debt-based system today, which keeps us in perpetual war. And you're letting these jackasses who are riding on the top, the shit floats to the top, folks, and that's the shit. Those people are living on the backs of the rest of us, sacrificing us, blood and treasure overseas, under the guise, or rather disguise, of fighting for democracy and freedom. Man, about the worst thing that ever happened was when Woodrow Wilson let himself get blackmailed and gave us the Federal Reserve System. Woodrow Wilson got caught writing love letters to Mrs. Peck, a married woman. And I don't think Mr. Peck really cared too much. As a matter of fact, it was a honey trap laid by the same people that gave you the Federal Reserve System, who happen to be Jews. Now that I've said that, I have to tell you, the book of Revelations characterizes them in 2 verses, a double witness in the Bible. And remember, Jesus Christ, or Yahshua the Messiah, is speaking, is dictating, and John the Apostle is on the island of Patmos writing this book out for the rest of us. And he says, I know who say you are Jews and are not. Each of one of those verses begins that way. And then one says, but are of the synagogue of Satan. And the other one says, but I shall make you the synagogue of Satan. It's straight up in the Bible, folks. Can't you read it? Can't you get it? There's nothing wrong with the Jews. It's those who say they are Jews and are not. There's a problem with the Jewish religion. And if you read the Bible carefully and enough, you realize that they went into Babylon one way and they came out another way. And it wasn't a good way. So you will realize that they went into captivity with a whole different set of values and perspectives, and they came out with a whole different thing. Folks, we're going to end it there. I've gone over an hour, and I usually don't do that. I got to listen to this before I post it up because I want to hear any mistakes I've made. And I also want to hear what I told you, because as I'm in these flows of consciousness, a lot of things come to mind that I don't take up and I don't bring out, that I want to convey or I intended to convey, but something else took precedence at the moment. So I had to choose. And I want to make sure to explain all of this stuff I can to you, because you and I are up against tremendous odds, because we don't know shit. We don't know the truth. And remember, in the NIV Bible, which was more accurate than the King James Version on a word-for-word translation, on that basis alone, which does mean it misses some of the spirit. There's some real bad political agendas in the NIV. Look at the committees and who served on it, and you'll know who they served. Anyway, what was I after? The NIV, from reading it, I gleaned out of that the command, love, truth, and justice, in that order. In order for you to have justice, in order for there to be justice, you have to know the truth. So you have to love the truth and get to the truth first before you can render proper judgment. You need to render proper judgment. And you can't do that because you're ignorant. Now, our founding fathers, every one of them, including the agnostics, the deists, or whatever you want to call them, were reared on the Bible. That was the reading book. That was the reading primer, however you want to say that. They were all educated on it as children. And I didn't get to read it till I was an adult. And all these modern churches, all of these modern religions are headed by fallen angels. They distract us. They take us down the rabbit holes. They mislead us. You have to read it for yourself. I don't give a damn what faith you're in. You got to read it for yourself. Find out what it says. Read it for the history. It's a law history book. Learn who the characters are. Learn their names. Learn and discover the plot. Learn the plot. And then on top of that, study character development. How do these people change from one play to the next? Now, when you start looking at the Bible that way, you'll realize that archetypes or stories have already been laid out in that Bible, in all those books. And they mirror what's going on today. And you will see that today things are set up so that they're mirroring what's in the Bible. And that it will help you loosen your mind up so you can get a more accurate perspective. Your perception will change. And you'll start realizing that these people are actors and actresses. And by the way, in the time of Shakespeare, no women were allowed on the stage. They were all transgenders, if you will, on the stage. I mean, that's the roles that they were cast in. Some of the men were effeminate. That's what they made a living doing. It was considered a very vile profession, not suitable for a woman to be involved in. So everybody knew that everybody on that stage, kissing and love scenes and all that shit, they knew it was two men all the damn time. So does that help you any? Does that loosen up your thinking so you will realize that nothing is new under the sun? And then you ought to know something. These bastards in D.C., they nickname each other. Sometimes they nickname themselves after biblical characters because they know they're just putting on an act for the puppet masters behind the scenes. And believe me, all of those people you're seeing down there, all of those politicians are nothing but glorified puppets. They're all controlled. The strings are definitely attached. You need to find out who the puppet masters are. You need to find out what motivates those jackasses, what their payoffs are. Your perspective will change. You'll get a little bit more calm when you realize what a shit show it is. And you'll realize that it's not as important as what they make it seem because they're using that to divide us further, folks. We have a money system based upon debt, not on wealth. They stole it all, people. They stole everything. We have a lot of wrongs to right. We have a lot of stuff to undo. It's going to take centuries probably to undo the crap that's happened in this country. And I think it's worth doing. You're going to have forensic historians. You're going to have people that tease that stuff apart and dig it apart. Why? To correct the evils that have been done, to right the wrongs. A lot of families and their fortunes have just been destroyed by these evil ones, these predators behind the scenes. And I think we're going to hold them to task. So we're waking up slowly, a little too slowly, but maybe we're right on time. Maybe this is the perfect time. Good little girl, yes. Oh, I love my puppy dog. But don't you put your face down in her face. I'm learning a lot. I'm going to do my best to protect her and safeguard her. I know she'll protect me. I want to get another dog. I'm looking at another rig, so I'll have more room. I want 2 dogs. They'll keep each other company. Here it'll be a little easier, but this breed gets destructive if they're not kept busy. So you got to entertain them. You got to give them a challenge. And she's crying, so folks, I got to go tend to her needs and tend to my needs. So I don't know what's important for you today, but I want you to do what is most important today. Do not put it off. Don't procrastinate it. What is in your best interest? Take a step back. Inhale, exhale, pause a little bit, and ask yourself, what is in my best interest? especially if you got an impulse control problem, because it's best you take a step back physically, even, or at least in your mind, and you ask yourself, what is in my best interest? Thereby, you might decide, boy, this impulse I'm about to give in to smash this guy in the face, and ain't in my best interest. As much as I want to do that, and as much satisfaction as it would give me to do that, I'm better off not letting the guy get my goat, not letting him goad me on, and getting me to strike him, least he'd be able to charge me with a crime. Yeah, I helped a lot of men in the prisons develop impulse control so they would be able to operate better once they got out. They didn't want to harm other people. Some of these guys were so weird looking. So, one guy, his shoulders were so big he had to go through the door sideways. And he was not that tall. And he had a real tiny waist on him. And his butt was small too, but he was just massive in the chest, freakish looking. Everybody wanted to fight him. You know, it's like a challenge because you're facing the mountain here. And unfortunately, he had hurt a lot of people, and he didn't want to hurt people anymore. I mean, this guy that was pretty mean looking, and who could be mean, he just didn't want to hurt anybody anymore. And so I did my best to build in tolerance with him. I worked with him for about a year, a little over a year. I remember the first time he showed up in my office, he was gone within less than 5 minutes, maybe 3 minutes. He was uncomfortable. And of course, I'm not forcing a guy into treatment, and I let him go. And he left, and over time, he'd send in another health needs request, and I charged him the $3 every time. I'm going to give the service too. He'd come in and we'd spend a little bit more time together. And I got to admit, he scared me at first. I was afraid of him. He could come across that desk. But as time went on, he relaxed and more, and I did too. And he spent more time. And it was in Central Unit, inside the walls in Florence. That's the old territorial prison they moved up from Yuma. I'm sure you've heard about that prison. Ain't no fun. And this poor guy was getting out, but I guess they had classified him up so he was not going to be released from a minimum security unit, but from maximum security. They were afraid of him. And I spent more than a year seeing him. That was probably the longest term therapy I got to do while in the Department of Corrections. He come in about the last time, and I realized this guy's really done. I've done all I can do for him. He's really accomplished a hell of a lot. And he didn't even know it. He didn't realize it. And I didn't really want to put him on the spot, but I had to. And I had to also put the locus of control in him for him to realize that he's his own man. He's in control. He's not dependent on me. I'm not in control of him. And he told me how much he couldn't stand other people again, which he always ranted about. And I looked at him and looked at my timing, and I said, I don't think so. I think you're doing fine. Matter of fact, we spent almost an hour together, or 45 minutes, whatever it was. I said, we spent so much time together. You're okay. And he got real shook up for a minute. And I said, just relax. You've really made a lot of progress. I mean, you can tolerate being around me, and we spent quite a bit of time together. Now, think back what it was like early on. What was it like when you first came in here? And he was more nervous than a wet rat was. I think part of the problem was that being out and in the yard office that long, the other inmates would think he was a snitch. But I had a good reputation with the inmates. They knew I did my job right. If they had a problem, they knew, get word to me about the problem guy on your run. I'll take care of it right away. So they would turn to me and come in and say, I think you need to see so-and-so. They're not doing well. And of course that helped a lot because we didn't want anybody burning their mattress, burning their bed, or doing anything like that. It would upset everybody, be subjected to that rancid smoke. Didn't want anybody harming themselves either, and the inmates knew I would take care of that. And they also knew that if they wanted treatment, they got that too. And maybe by then they realized this big guy wasn't being a snitch. He was actually spending time with me. So I'm glad I had that reputation with them. I think I may have saved a few lives. I don't know if I could say a lot of lives, but I did my best to build in impulse control and give these guys an ability to stop and think about what's in their best interest. Because I wanted to save that other life, because if they went off, they could do some damage. Now, you may think they didn't deserve treatment, but my thinking was I wasn't there just doing that for the inmate in front of me. I was doing that for the people they were going to be running into afterwards, so that they wouldn't get assaulted and harmed. Some of these guys even regretted doing what they had done, and they had done some pretty bad stuff. We had some guys that didn't ever want to get out of prison again because of what they had done, because they didn't want to do it again. I had a tremendous amount of respect for inmates like that who knew that they weren't safe and who didn't want to get back out there again because they hated what they had done so much. Even though I thought I could have treated them and helped them, they didn't want treatment. I respected that. And if I thought I could treat them, I'd tell them. If I thought I could help them, I'd tell them. And there were some things that I was about to try to do that I couldn't rightly do, and I turned to other psychologists, leaders in the field at the Association for the Advancement of Behavioral Therapy, the researchers, the people on the cutting edge, and I would ask them how I can desensitize things. And never forget when one woman, one of the leading researchers, she finally turned around and said the truth as she was walking away, and I'm so glad she did that. It was a real gift to me. And I had inmates who were suffering PTSD because of the murders they had committed. She turned as she walked away, and she said to me, "I'm not going to desensitize anyone to murder." I was so grateful for that, because that put things into perspective for me, because I did not want to desensitize any man so he could murder more easily. I did want them able to recall what they had done and accept it, and a lot of them had blocks on that. So they had done this stuff, and they couldn't recall the wicked deed that they had done. Or, as one inmate said after a long-term treatment, seeing me, it's Dr. Kent, I remember I emptied the gun. And I told everyone, even my own attorney, I had only shot one time. He says, "I didn't remember that." He says, "But now I remember I was over her and I had emptied the gun." And just being able to access that memory gave him somewhat of a reprieve, if you will. At least he knows now that not only was he capable, but he had done it. And when you can separate that off from yourself, then you can do it again. If you separate yourself off from reality like that, you can do it again. I enjoyed working in DOC. I hated the administration. My peers didn't like me much because they were all libtards. They didn't do their jobs. They shunned the jobs. They didn't provide the care or the treatment. They abandoned their positions, left in the middle of the day. I was stuck covering for them, stuck doing their jobs after hours because they had left early and were defrauding the state of their time. They were lying on their sheets. I wasn't. I get pissed when they make me stay and work late, and I'd ask them to authorize the overtime, and the facility's healthcare administrator would get upset with me for asking for overtime, and I'm like, "You got to authorize the overtime, Rob. I've already done 10 hours here. I'm burnt. I don't think I got anything left in me for the day, and you want me to stick around and do somebody else's job? You better give me the..." And they got pissed off because I was just supposed to give it to them. Fuck you, man. You know, don't give me any shit like that. I guess I developed the attitude of inmate. I want only what I got coming to me, and nothing more, nothing less. I don't like liberals very much. They insisted we coexist with them, but they ran us off. Most of your psychologists are liberals because if they found out you were conservative, they wouldn't give you a license. I wanted a license in Oregon. They didn't want some gentleman out of the South who minded his P's and Q's and was polite, had manners. They hated that. It was dominated by women, by a bunch of bitchy women at that. The only men that were allowed were emasculated men, totally capitulated to feminism. Wow. We had the best psychology in the world in the first part of the last century. And it got worse in the 50s. And by 1983, it was all over. Became a female-dominated profession. But I've gone way long, folks. I hope you got something out of this video. I should ask you to like my videos and share the videos at the beginning of this. Just share it with people you know are going to like it. I don't want anybody complaining. My job is to sell the Bibles. I also like the Navage system. You'll find that link down below as well. Get it. We live in a very polluted atmosphere. It's weaponized. We are in a war. Those are chemical and biological weapons that they're spraying around. The Navage system will help dislodge that stuff so you don't ingest it. You don't want that stuff in you. The number one element is aluminum. Aluminum causes Alzheimer's. Don't give me this shit. It's just associated with it or correlated. Aluminum causes getting in the brain. Your body attacks it and it coats it up with plaques and forms tangles. That's why we have so much Alzheimer's and so much dementia today. They also aluminized the forest. The trees took that stuff up, and those forest fires were spectacular because of that. And so they're destroying the environment. You may think you have an organic garden, but I can guarantee that their spraying pollutes that too. The spraying stopped after Trump was sworn in, or maybe when he was elected it stopped actually. And it didn't start until June after he had been sworn in. I guess by then they figured out that they could get away with shit, that they had control over him. And they started spraying the bugs again, spraying us cockroaches. That's all we are to them, folks, is we're cockroaches. Look at those Georgia Guidestones, because a lot of you are going to tell me this isn't written in stone, but it sure as hell is. 806 feet above sea level, I believe. Now, what's the significance of 806 feet above sea level? Might that be the height of the tsunamis, the waves they're expecting? Might they already know and have mapped out the areas that are safe to live in? Might not those submariners that retire, the upper echelons who seem to conglomerate, well, they seem to settle in a couple of areas of the states in particular. Might they not know something the rest of us might want to know? Yeah. We got to talk about the Leviathan at some point, folks. Anyway, you have a very blessed day. May Yahweh bless you. May Yahshua, the Messiah, open your eyes as to what this Bible of his really means. May you learn. May you be able to defend. Yahweh blesses self-defense. He will not bless rebellion. You're given these rulers and masters for a reason, because you've disobeyed the law. Read about the curses for disobedience and the blessings for obedience. Those are the subtitles of those chapters, if you will, in the NIV version of the Bible. And you will find that in those in Leviticus and Deuteronomy, that they're pretty much repeated. And so you read that and tell me if, when reading those curses, if you're not reading about the United States today. You are. We're cursed because we put that natural law, God's law, the 10 Commandments, away from us. And you and I are parties to the covenant. Those were our ancestors at Mount Sinai. The Jews were infiltrated by the descendants of Esau, Edom. They're spoilers. They're bad for everybody. Bad for the Jews, too. Okay, you can hear her. She needs my attention. Bye-bye, folks.